What's going on, guys? It is James Alba here with D4 Sports, and I am joined by a return guest to the pod, Mr. Matt G. How you doing, buddy?
Good, doing great. I am a recurring guest. This is a big time deal. Hopefully, I get a T-shirt in the mail. So,
Get a
um,
sweatshirt out of it. Actually, we got some merch in the pipeline.
all right. Hey, I respect that. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, speaking of merch, actually, not necessarily merch, but what I got right here is our first Southern Bottle brew.
Wow.
We might have to hook you up with this because it's not the best beer I've ever had, but it's solid. It's
It's
solid.
solid. Solid. Is it a stout?
It's an amber ale. It came out
Amber.
pretty dark, but it's good. It's
Okay.
good.
All right.
So next time you're over here, you might have to give one a try.
Hey, shameless plug. Definitely.
A shameless plug. Shout out to the guys at Southern Bottle. So dude, obviously we have you on here for a reason. We're talking ball.
Yep.
We got the Super Bowl this week. I wanted to have you on to do a little Super Bowl preview
Yep.
and also to give a little intro to you being here for season 3. I know we'll probably get together at some point to talk draft in the next month or two.
Yeah.
I know you're doing your own stuff and your own work on it, and we'll definitely be diving in pretty soon.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, but are you excited about this week, man? I mean, I know it's kind of slapped us in the face. Like it snuck up because the playoffs really kind of went quick after that wild card weekend. How you feeling about this week? Are you ready to go?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm so happy that we were able to have a freaking season of the NFL, and the fact that we made it this far is super exciting for the league. And I feel like there's nothing the league can't accomplish at this point. It's wild. I was talking to my dad the other day about this, and we had the snow days here, and it was just like I was watching NFL Network, and it's like, Super Bowl week coverage now. Like, it's no longer just the Super Bowl. Like, it's a whole big thing with media days, and of course they did it on Zoom now. But yeah, I mean, the atmosphere, the hype of it all really starts picking up. Starting Monday of this week, and it's really ramping up. So it's exciting. I'm thrilled. I can't wait. It's going to be a fantastic game. I just hope it doesn't turn out to be like that Pats Rams Super Bowl, because that was a complete letdown.
Yeah.
But I just hope not.
No, yeah, I understand, and I think part of the reason you bring up a good point that the game's kind of snuck up on us is because we get this 2-week break in between the game. But normally the teams are there like in Tampa with the media, and they have like the media row going on, and like It's not a Zoom thing. Like the reporters are always tweeting about these questions being asked and stuff like that. Like Marshawn Lynch not answering questions one year, like all this fun stuff that kind of goes on with the in-person aspect of the media. A lot of that's not here presently.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Usually you have like kids day reporters or whatever that ask some really cheesy questions, but it's always fun, and it's a good time. One of my favorite parts of the interview process from this week was OCU Manura hopped on the call to a couple guys, and he was talking to Steve Spagnuolo, who was his defensive coordinator with the Giants, and his former teammate, and Jason Pierre-Paul, and even Tom Brady, and it was kind of cool to see that, and it kind of brought back that like fun element, those like random questions that they usually have in person. I believe one year there was a lady with like a wedding dress that came and asked Tom Brady to marry her, right? Pretty interesting stuff that we miss out on this year.
Yeah, definitely. But regardless, I mean, are you happy with the matchup? Is this the matchup that you wanted to see all along? I mean, we know it's the matchup Tony Romo wanted to see all along.
Do you want me to make a slight guess here? I think there's a better than good chance. I don't know what even that percentage is that these two are going to be here in Tampa.
Wow.
Today's the
both
first
sides
time.
of it.
I thought Tampa Bay had a very uphill battle to climb. Now I think they're in the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, when you look at this, you can't ask for a better game for the NFL in terms of marketing and just young fans, old fans, everyone's involved in this.
Yeah.
They keep bringing it up, but it's the GOAT versus the baby GOAT, right? Like, it's almost like passing the baton, if you will, especially if the Chiefs do win. Tom Brady passing the baton to Patrick Mahomes. Again, I know a lot of people wanted to see Rodgers versus Brady, not Rodgers versus Brady wouldn't happen, but Rodgers versus Mahomes, or something like that. But I think that this is you can't ask for anything better than this. I mean, this is awesome in terms of offensive battles. And honestly, defensively, you know, two really good coordinators, Todd Bowles and, you know, Steve Spagnuolo, respectively, with Tampa and Kansas City. So it's going to be a real good game. Really excited to see what happens. I mean, again, you can't ask for much better.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the defensive coordinators because I think the most underrated aspect of this game is the defenses.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously right now the conversation is, you know, Mahomes versus Brady, and then it's, you know, Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman and Travis Kelce versus Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Gronk, you know, basically all talking about the skills positions and the quarterback play on the offenses, which are high flying. There's no doubt about it. But I think both teams are bringing some pretty talented and pretty opportunistic defenses into this game as well. And, you know, I just think of the way the Bucks got here for the most part. You know, Brady and that offense didn't really start clicking until later in the year. I thought the Bucks defense really carried them as the stable force throughout the season.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, when you look at, you know, that defense, you know, that's led by Todd Bowles, their defensive coordinator, you look at their front four, you know, all these great teams that win Super Bowls have a really good front four. You know, you talk about Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett and Vita Vey, you know, guys like that. I mean, it's really, you know, that this is a great defensive line. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but obviously the Kansas City Chiefs are banged up on the offensive line as well. I think that can be the real X factor in this game is the Bucks front four versus the banged up Kansas City Chiefs offensive line.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, it starts with them. Of course, you know, they have a great linebacking core. You know, and of course in the secondary, you know, they really have some good young guys on that secondary. So, you know, Sean Murphy Bunting and you know, my favorite guy in the draft last year was Antoine Winfield Jr., one of the safeties.
About it. We talked
from Minnesota. I mean, he's a heck of a player. You know, they have a lot of good pieces. They can move around. They have good depth. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah, and I personally think Devin White is the best linebacker in football no one talks about.
Yeah, Devin White, you know, Levante David, all, you know, both really good linebackers. You know, White's a guy that, you know, he came out, I think he went into LSU as a running back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he's super athletic, kind of like that Miles Jack mold, if you will, coming out. Just a all around linebacker, especially in today's NFL. He could stay on the field all three downs. He could run sideline to sideline. He could hit. You know, he could fill the hole. So, yeah, he's the complete package.
Yeah, and he gets the privilege of playing next to one of the more underrated players in our generation, in Levante David, who has just been a consummate professional throughout his entire career, Pro Bowls, All Pros, like just a stud. But like doesn't really get the recognition because he's played on some bad defenses. He hasn't been part of a really lockdown defense like this probably in his entire career, if I had to guess. I haven't looked at the numbers closely, but this has to be probably the most, you know, well-touted defense and complete unit that he's gotten the chance to play on.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, Levante David, and he'll make the most of this, you know, like this situation and this opportunity. And another guy I forgot to bring up in that front four, I forgot, but Ndamukong Suh, like guy who's been there, you know, obviously has signed that big contract, you know, years ago in Miami when he left Detroit, and, you know, he's kind of bounced around a bit, but he's playing really well too. And you kind of look and you kind of see Antonio Brown's another guy, you know, well-traveled guy, obviously had some off the field problems. Leonard Fournette's another guy who's, you know, producing really well, especially in the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, this team is filled of guys who are just, you know, very similar to that Patriots mold. You kind of bring them in and they're kind of like a disgruntled, you know, guy having some off the field problems maybe, but they kind of turn it around. Maybe it's not the New England effect. Maybe it's the Tom Brady effect.
Well, it's actually something that, I was listening to. It was one of the media things going on for the Super Bowl. They had Danny Amendola on, and they were asking him about the Patriot way.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what made the Patriot way the Patriot way? It was having a quarterback in the building that took less money and demanded nothing short of excellence from all the people that were able to be signed because of how selfless he was. Like,
yeah.
And if that's it, I didn't view it as a shot at Bill Belichick, but I certainly viewed it as a, you know, tip of the cap to 12 over there in Tampa now.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, that's one thing that I kind of always brought up, even as a Giants fan with Eli Manning, is like, people, Giant fans are complaining like, oh, you never got the guy help on the offensive line. It's like, well, Eli's also making a ton of money. Like he could also take a big pay cut, kind of like Tom Brady. You look at these guys, a guy like Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, they don't need to make $40-50 million a year. They just don't, to take up, a chunk of that cap space. This isn't the MLB where there's no cap, right? So, they need to kind of take that, I think, a lot of guys in the future and kind of use that as a mold to make sure their team is well-rounded. That way you can have guys on your team like Rob Gronkowski and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Jason Pierre-Paul, and the list goes on and on. But, that's a thing that, Danny Amendola hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely. Tom Brady is definitely much to thank when it comes to that New England way.
And he took less money to be in Tampa. Like, I understand he was a 42-year-old quarterback, but he took money that put him, I don't think it was even in the top 5 of quarterbacks being paid in the NFL. And obviously after extensions were given to Mahomes and then Watson subsequently that offseason, like I think he got pushed into like the 7th or 8th, quarterback in the league being paid. And once again, here he is as one of the 2 that are under center in the biggest stage.
Yeah, I mean, 10th Super Bowl appearance. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that. Going for, I believe it's his 7th, correct? Yep. The 7th ring would be tied for, I think he's tied with Michael Jordan now. So he would surpass Michael Jordan for championships all time, which is, I mean, honestly, when you look at it, especially at his age of 43, throwing 40 touchdown passes with a whole new team, a whole new system, with an offensive coordinator who he played against. Yep. It's just wild to think about, man. He really is the ultimate athlete. He really is.
Yeah. And it's so true. And something that I was talking with Mike, who was, co-host many times on the show, he brought up a great point, and he said, Tom Brady did this in a COVID shortened season as well. Not a COVID shortened season, but a shortened off season where he changed teams, changed philosophies in terms of going from a New England system that was much more about the intermediate and short passing game and the power run game, and then goes to Tampa, and Bruce Arians is just a psycho, and it's just like I'm gonna throw the ball 50 times a game.
Exactly.
And you're going to air it out. And at 43, he's just making it look effortless. It's crazy because he didn't have the time to get the chemistry with Mike Evans, and he didn't have the time to learn about how Chris Godwin runs a slant route. It took time to get that going. And that was the early season struggles we saw for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, hat tip to Tom and his trainer, Alex Guerrero, who's, formed that TB12 method, and it works. I mean, it works. And
ice cream,
what's that?
Avocado ice cream.
Avocado ice cream. That is the big secret. If you want to play quarterback in the NFL, guys, if you're listening, just avocado ice cream. That's it.
And no strawberries, no tomatoes.
Right.
No red foods. That's the biggest thing.
Interesting.
Can't have it.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I mean, I've heard McAfee talk about it because he seems to be pretty well versed in it, and it's a joke, man. I have no idea what he puts in his body, but I'll tell you what, he's 43 and he's slinging the ball around like a 20-year-old. It's crazy.
Yeah, I saw a stat that in, I believe, the latter half of his career, he's had almost a better career than his first half. He's had a better career than most quarterbacks in the second half of his career. And that's just, I mean, that's astounding. I mean, it's insane. He is the GOAT. There is no one better than him right now, to date. And that says a lot about, 101 years of the NFL, and he is the best quarterback. And listen, talk about Patrick Mahomes, just to flip the coin, he'll get there. He'll get there. I don't know if he'll surpass Tom, but, and he might, just the way the game is changing. But it's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to bring us into probably the first storyline that I wanted to bring up. It's Mahomes versus Brady. And, we've waxed poetic about Brady for the first, 10 minutes of this. But the idea that you're probably looking at the greatest quarterback to ever do it, And now you're probably also looking at the most talented quarterback to ever do it, playing on the same field. And for a lot of time, I thought that was Aaron Rodgers. I thought he was the most talented quarterback to ever step on a field. But in the 3-4 years I've seen Patrick Mahomes play now, it's hard to argue that we have seen a more talented individual lead a team at quarterback than this guy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the weapons around him are really freaking good. But and then in terms of, Andy Reid, his play calling along with Eric Bieniemy, I think that's obviously a huge bonus for him. But I think, again, you look at Patrick Mahomes, he would get it done really wherever he went.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. I mean, the guy came back from a dislocated knee last year and then went on to win the Super Bowl. So, I mean, really, he's beyond talented. I mean, he's just another level. I mean, I think as far as talent at the quarterback position and what he could do athletically, he's better than Tom Brady.
Yep.
At any point in Tom Brady's career, right? He's just a different type of athlete. And I think a lot of people also misunderstand that, Patrick Mahomes isn't Lamar Jackson, right? He's not like that running quarterback that's going to run, power read or, counter or whatever. He could throw the football better than anybody in this league. He probably has the best arm. He really can do it all. I mean, let's be honest. So, tough as they come, he's a leader. He's super impressive. Young kid too,
Yeah. And I personally think, watching him play, I've tried to think of guys to compare him to at this current status. And I honestly think you're just looking at a version of 6'3" Russell Wilson with better arm talent, like in terms of the athleticism, the ability to escape, the improvisation skills, but then just like an absolute cannon. And he also happens to be 5-6 inches taller than Russell Wilson as well. Like it's crazy. And Russell Wilson's probably going to go down as one of the 10 best quarterbacks we've ever seen as well.
Right. If you took Vince Young, prime Vince Young quarterback in Texas, and put him on steroids and made this ultimate quarterback of Vince Young, that's what Patrick Mahomes is.
Yeah. And it's incredible to see, at such a young age. And I don't think has he even turned 25 years old yet?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think what does help him compared to Russell Wilson is his weapons are always better. Like in Russell Wilson, he's thrown to David Moore. I mean, Tyler Lockett's good. DK Metcalf, of course, is a year and a half now or 2 years now that he's been on the scene, and that's great. But for Russell Wilson's career, he hasn't had a lot of great offensive pieces around him. His offensive lines stink.
Yeah,
his lines are terrible. So I think that when you talk about talent around him too, that definitely helps. I think Patrick Mahomes obviously has the edge.
Yeah, and I think when you look at coaching as well, I mean, I love Pete Carroll, but I don't think Russell Wilson has had a stable presence on the offensive side of the ball in the quarterback room or, just in the coaching staff in general. Brian Schottenheimer got fired this year, finally. And you look at what Mahomes has dealt with. He's looked at probably the greatest single play caller in our modern generation of football, Andy Reid. I don't think many debate that at this point, considering how long he's been doing it. And then, something else that I wanted to bring up. I mean, for the love of God, can Eric Bieniemy get a head coaching job at some point, please? Like, yeah. I don't understand what goes on every time he enters an interview process, how they can find someone else they'd rather have as their head coach than Eric Bieniemy. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm going to rant on that a little bit. I was on a podcast earlier this week, and we had talked about that as well. And, the Houston Texans hired David Culley, who was the Baltimore Ravens pass game coordinator. But first to the Houston Texans, the Baltimore Ravens passing attack was god-awful, okay?
Dead last in the league this year.
Yeah.
They were last in the league this year.
They were, yeah, right. They were, I mean, it was abysmal. And I don't want to hear people who listen to this and be like, well, Lamar Jackson's not a good thrower. Right? I don't want to hear about that. It's not about that. It's a terrible hire. I'm sorry. He may be a mature guy who's been around the league. Bieniemy is, and I really believe, and I know a lot of people didn't say this, because they said, Watson wouldn't have been swayed by the head coaching decision. I call BS on that. I think the enemy would have been a huge upgrade, and I think it would have tilted Deshaun Watson to go back potentially. I still think he's out the door, but I think that obviously that's way more attractive than David Culley. Absolutely insane that he has not been hired yet.
And something that I think is interesting is I think Eric Bieniemy in some respects doesn't feel the need to leave until he finds the situation that he likes. Because if he can't go to a team and be the head coach of a team that he is absolutely bought in on, like, you know, even if the Texans offered him the job, Deshaun Watson's disgruntled and wants to leave. J.J. Watt is probably out the door this year. They have no draft picks. They have no salary cap. I wouldn't leave Kansas City if I'm the OC of that team. I wouldn't leave Kansas City to go be the head coach of the Texans.
Right. Yeah, personally. Absolutely. No, I agree with you. And honestly, like, it's very similar to Josh McDaniels in, New England.
100%.
It's the same thing. And I think, there's potential there that Bieniemy could end up just taking over in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very possible. I think Andy Reid's still got a ways to go.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Bieniemy, knock on wood, will be hired by then by somewhere else. But again, maybe there's part of it that Eric Bieniemy doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It just seems to me at this point that Eric Bieniemy is every team's Rooney Rule card. It's like, we'll bring Eric Bieniemy in for our Rooney Rule interview, and by the end of the day, he always walks out the door. And then even the Falcons came out with that story about how he doesn't interview well.
Yeah.
Like, which I find to be complete BS, because I saw him get interviewed the week before the conference championship game, and he is just waxing poetic about his team, and he's addressing the media in respects to his head coaching, pursuits. And I couldn't have heard a more well-spoken guy talk about the joy that he has coaching this team and how he's focused on winning the Super Bowl this year, and he'll worry about his job later. Like, I don't know how that guy doesn't interview well, considering who he's been mentored by for the last, what is it? I think he's been on that staff for like 5 years now, 6 years almost.
Yep. Yeah.
So I just don't understand.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, let's hope that Bieniemy, does get a job eventually, and he isn't just a Rooney Rule candidate at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really legitimately thought of,
Yeah. Give me a storyline that you're looking forward to here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would love to go with Tom versus time, but we kind of addressed that. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs' offensive line, kind of in how they're struggling right now, versus that Bucs front four.
Mm-hmm.
Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, the guard for the Chiefs, pretty good player. He's a doctor in Canada, and he sat out this year studying how to basically beat COVID. And hats off to him.
Respect to him, absolutely.
Respect to him. Can't blame him for that. But he was out, and then Mitchell Schwartz goes down, and then of course Eric Fisher goes down. Both are going to be out of this game, so that's 3 starters from last year's Super Bowl team.
Yep.
Who are going to be out. Now, you're talking about Mike Remmers, who's going to go in and play left tackle, who played in the Super Bowl for the Carolina Panthers at right tackle against Von Miller and the Broncos, and Von Miller destroyed that man on every single snap. And Mike Remmers he's a good pro. He's an average tackle. He's a swing tackle.
Yep.
Calling a spade, but
played guard a lot in the league too.
Right. And the thing is like, is he going to hold up against that front four that I mentioned before of, they and Sue in the middle, and then of course JPP and Shaq Barrett, who honestly are elite pass rushers, and they destroyed the Packers offensive line. I mean,
with David Bakhtiari out of that game, I just, and obviously Brian Bulaga left in the offseason, and Rick Wagner stepped in, who I thought actually played well for the Packers throughout this year. I just remember watching that game and saying, David Bakhtiari might be the difference between the Packers winning and losing this game, because there was multiple third downs where Jason Pierre-Paul just absolutely wrecked the game.
Yeah,
within
just teed off.
2 seconds he was at the quarterback.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Absolutely. It is, and then you look at it and you say, to your point, like Mitchell Schwartz was a guy who I think let up like 1 sack last year. Like if that, you know what I mean? And like, that's a huge difference. And Eric Fisher, yeah, he's not the number 1 overall pick that he was drafted at, but he's still a pretty damn good offensive tackle in the NFL. Gets the job done.
Top 15.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't think anybody would take a top 15 tackle. Tackles don't grow on trees. So listen, that's going to be a huge storyline in this game. And I think it really could be, the Achilles heel for this Kansas City offense. But again, if anyone is going to be able to play to that, almost to make it a strength in a weird way, it would be Andy Reid.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how it works. But I think if that's how the Bucs are going to, personally, I think that's how the Bucs win this game, is because of the beat up offensive line of Kansas City and their pass rush and their front four just dominating.
I think that's fair. And I just think about the way Andy Reid, runs his offense, I think all the window dressing he does with the fly sweep stuff and the misdirection and not necessarily RPO game, but just like the good play fake game. I think it keeps a really good, pass rush at bay. I do find it interesting that I think it's total opposite ends of the spectrums for offensive line play, because I think the Bucs probably had a top 5 offensive line in the league this year, just based off the eye test. I just look across that front, and I really like the O-line that they had. I personally really like Ryan Jensen on the interior as a center. Ali Marpet, small school guy, just a baller. Tristan Wirfs, drafted at 14 this year, just an absolute stud right out of the gate. Donovan Smith, I think, is overrated as hell, but I won't get into that. But yeah, I think the Bucs have a really good offensive line, and one that I think will keep Brady upright, which he'll certainly need to be if he wants to perform in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And real quick, and just to kind of counteract that, is I know a lot of people like to bring up the Steve Spagnuolo versus Tom Brady comparison. And, I don't think that that's fair, just because 2007 was now 14 years ago. Yes. I think as a coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo has been around enough to know that he's not going to whip out the same game plan that he had with the Giants. And I think that a lot of people love to just bring that up. Oh, well, he's done it before. It doesn't really matter. It's a total different defense. I mean, you don't have Michael Strahan, Justin Tuck, and OCU Manure rushing the passer.
One of the best defensive lines we've seen in this modern era.
Yeah.
Between Strahan, Uzi, Justin Tuck. I mean,
even the linebacking core, Antonio Pierce.
Yeah.
Kawika Mitchell was a pretty good guy. And then
Matthias Kiwanuka. I mean, good defense. Good
right. Defense. Matthias Kiwanuka was their 4th pass rusher. You know what I mean?
Justin Tuck lined up on the interior he was a rookie that year. I believe.
Yeah.
It was he occasionally came into play.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a guy that's a borderline, he might be a Hall of Famer one day.
Right. Yeah. They had a guy like Dave Tollefson who, just from Missouri, Northwestern State, a D2 small school guy, and he was a guy who would give you, 7 sacks a year, but he was another guy who was you throw in there, and he wasn't a liability, that's for sure. So it's totally a different defense. When you look at this Kansas City defense, I mean, of course, Tyrann Mathieu is an absolute, freak.
Yeah.
Chris Jones is an absolute freak. Frank Clark, brings some juice off the edge. But it's nothing to write home about with this defense. It's really more scheme that helps them be successful than the players, more so than anything.
Let me say this. Just watching the Chiefs in the playoffs this year and the couple of games I saw, I think Chris Jones might be one of the scummiest scumbags in the league. His interactions with offensive linemen, I've never seen a guy chirping more in the trenches than him. He literally almost got into a fight with 5 different Bills offensive linemen in the championship game.
I love that though.
I do. He's scummy, and I mean scummy as a compliment. He's literally he gets down to business, and people don't like to block him. They don't like to block him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he really is a force. And it says a lot, about this game. You look at it again, and Ndamukong Suh, who was kind of the stud of the past in the interior D line, and now Chris Jones, another guy who's now kind of taken over that baton now. So it's definitely interesting. Again, I'm really curious to see, and I think another big factor too is Leonard Fournette. The guy, he's averaging almost a full yard extra per carry, He only had 6 touchdowns in the regular season. He has, I think, 4 already in the playoffs. So, I mean, that's fantastic. He's really been running very well, and like to see how he does in this game.
Yeah, and I personally like how Leonard Fournette has played, particularly in their downhill running game. Yes. Personally, to me, I just based off of the all-around package, I thought Ronald Jones was a better back this year. Yes, and I think Ronald Jones made himself a lot of money this offseason because I believe he's a free agent. And he had a rough first couple of years coming out of USC. People, he was drafted in the second round and people had high hopes for him. I remember him being like a big time pick, like on a lot of fantasy boards, like in like the 6th round, he just sucked. Yes. But, in terms of, pass catching, home run capability, I thought Ronald Jones was really good this year, but he went down with the quad injury early in the playoffs, and Leonard Fournette hasn't really skipped a beat. So I think, after 2 weeks of rest and a chance to get healthy, I think both of those backs have a real chance to become dynamic forces in the offense this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be fun to watch for sure.
And on the opposite side, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is someone that D4 Sports predicted very early on in the process of the draft would be an absolute stud. Don't forget that, guys. And, Le'Veon Bell, I think Kansas City in their own right has a very good duo to keep an eye on as they attack, because most of us are going to look at the passing game. And I think both of these teams, we saw it. We saw it with Kansas City when they played Buffalo for the first time in the regular season. I mean, they walked away from that game with 240 yards rushing as a team, and they didn't really pass the ball. Yes. So they and the Bucs have had games where they had to grind it out, running the ball as well. Both teams have shown that while they have very diverse and dynamic pass games, they can run the ball and get down and dirty when they have to.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be really fun to watch. I mean, this game is really going to be, I think it's going to be one of the better Super Bowls. I mean, I don't, I feel like we say that almost every year, but realistically, this is, I mean, you can't ask for much better than this.
No. So, the betting lines that I've looked at have this game anywhere from 3 to 3.5 points favoring Kansas City. I'm going to give you an opportunity to pick the game. If you want to pick with the spread or if you want to just go on the money line, let me know. But what is your prediction for this game on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm going to go this is tough. I'm going to go 38-28 Tampa Bay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. 38-28 Tampa Bay. I'll make sure we have a little graphic down below when this gets uploaded.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, and I think we're going to be, differing here. As much as I want Tampa to win this game, I do think Kansas City comes out on top. My final score is going to be, I'm going to say it's 34 to 28 Kansas City.
That's it. Yeah. I listen, I definitely think it's going to be a higher scoring game. It's not going to be that Rams-Pats Super Bowl.
Over under is set at 55.5 right now, by the way.
Yeah. I think the over. Yeah. I think that the over, I just think honestly, when it comes down to it, my philosophy behind why I picked it the way I did was, I think Kansas City's defense is obviously a little weaker than Tampa's. Mm-hmm. And I gotta be honest, I just really think that Tom Brady is so freaking on fire right now, and all these weapons that he has, like, yeah, they're not the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Because they don't have Patrick Mahomes, they don't have that speed as much as you'd think, but like Mike Evans is an elite freaking receiver. Like
Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, like he really is.
He has never had a season under 1,000 yards since he's entered the league.
And then Chris Godwin. I mean, let's list it. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller is a freaking damn good wide receiver.
Yeah, we got to see if Antonio Brown's going to play this week. I mean, he's dealing with the injury, but Scotty Miller had a 50-something yard touchdown reception at the end of that first half.
Listen, he is again. I know obviously the connection, but he's the Julian Edelman. He is the Wes Welker
receiver, baby. He
really is. Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, man, that offensive line is way better than Kansas City's offensive line. when you talk about where the game is won, offensive and defensive lines, Tampa is better.
Yeah.
By far. And I think that's going to be the difference in this game, to be honest with you. And I think Kansas City's defense is good. They're not great. And I think that eventually it's just going to crack a little bit.
Do you view there being any sort of advantage, and it's something we get to talk about, we'll end it here. Do you view any sort of advantage with the home field deal with the Bucks playing in Tampa? Do you
Definitely.
see
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be as split up in terms of the fans, right? Because the 7,500 healthcare workers are going to be local people.
Yeah.
They're going to be Bucks fans, I think that, again, it sounds silly, but you get to sleep in your own bed. You're in your own locker room.
Are they?
Yeah.
That?
Yeah.
Are they actually the home team?
Yeah, they're in their own locker room.
Okay.
I don't know if they're the home team, but they're in their locker room. I mean, how asinine would it be even if they were the away team, that they gave the Chiefs their locker? Like that.
If I was the Chiefs, I'd say get your ass in the visitors' locker room.
Yeah, of course, I get that, but no, I do think that is an advantage. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that I do think it's a bit of an advantage. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and I think it's an underrated aspect to it. And I think in a regular season with no, COVID restrictions and a full stadium, I don't think it would matter personally.
Right.
But I think the fact that this has been such a unique season and there has been so much oddities and it's going to be a limited number of fans. I think there is a lot of comfort in playing in a stadium that you have played. What is it? I think it's 8 games. They've played 8 games in that stadium already this year. And I do think there's something to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, listen, with COVID too, it's like, if you're the Chiefs, yeah, you're there. There's no real time difference, maybe an hour. Right. But like, you still may have to like stay in your hotel room. Like maybe you can't leave the hotel room, where if I'm, Rob Gronkowski, I'm walking around my house, and I'm sure for him walking around his house in his boxers or something, getting like, an ice cream sundae like the day before the Super Bowl. But like, honestly, like there's like a weird comfort in that. You know what I mean? Maybe too much for Rob Gronkowski, but I think it is an advantage. So yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. All right. So our picks are in, and that's all I have for today. Matt, I really want to thank you for coming on, kind of giving these guys and girls listening a chance to just dive into our brains about what we think about this game. I certainly hope that we get to be entertained this weekend, which I think we will be, regardless of the score. And we'll talk soon, man. We got draft coming up, and we'll definitely be together chatting about some different things.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, guys. This is D4 Sports Entertainment for the walk-ons of life. I'm your host, James Alba, and I want to thank you guys for watching. Follow us on Instagram and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next time.